Chapter 31. The Ghost in the Machine. Time skip in the van. The interior of the armored van is dim, smelling of ozone and old blood. Steve sits with his head bowed, the weight of the encounter on the bridge crushing him more than any physical blow could. Alisa sits beside him, her hand gripping his arm in a silent show of grim solidarity. Her eyes occasionally flicker with that ancient, predatory light, a biological instinct to protect her own. Steve stares at the floor of the van, his voice a low, hollow rasp. It was him. He looked right at me like he didn't even know me. Sam looks over to Steve. How is that even possible? It was like 70 years ago. Natasha looks over to Katie as she's staying quiet. Steve answers. Zola. Bucky's whole unit was captured in 43. Zola experimented on him. Whatever he did helped Bucky survive the fall. They must have found him and... Natasha looks over to Steve. None of that's your fault, Steve. Steve looks down. Even when I had nothing, I had Bucky. In the corner, Katie Forbes, known to the Red Room as Recluse, huddles with her knees to her chest. Her breathing is ragged, but not just from the fight. Inside her, the Red Room serum is working overtime, knitting together bruised muscle and hairline fractures with a cold, efficient speed that always makes her feel less than human. The psychological cost of the biochemical enhancement weighs on her. She feels other, a sterile weapon that doesn't get sick or age like the soft civilians outside. As the van jolts, the psychoneural mapping in her mind begins to fray. The Bolshoi glitch is triggering. Flashes of a life she never lived compete with the reality of the van. She smells the rosin of a dance floor and feels the phantom pain of point shoes. But then a sharp image of Caroline pierces through the fake memories. The thought of Caroline is the only thing anchoring her to the present, helping her fight back the total identity replacement the Soviets tried to write over her soul. Sam notices Natasha is bleeding heavily from her shoulder and looks at the guards, then at Alisa and the struggling Katie. Sam speaks up. We need to get a doctor here. If we don't put pressure on that wound, she's gonna bleed out here in the truck. Suddenly, one of the guards pulls out an electric rod. Sam backs away, bracing for the worst, but the guard swings the weapon, neutralizing the other guard and knocking him out cold. The guard reaches up and pulls off the heavy tactical helmet, revealing Maria Hill. Maria speaks up. That thing was squeezing my brain. Sam looks at her in utter confusion. Alisa's grip on Steve's arm relaxes slightly as she senses the shift in the room, her grim instincts identifying Hill as a non-threat. Maria turns to Steve. Who's this guy? And the girl? Natasha speaks up for Katie. Call her Katie. Maria looks at her, then nods. Time skip outside the van. Minutes later, the convoy screeches to a halt. Brock Rumlow and his strike team jump out, weapons drawn and ready to finish the job. Rumlow speaks up. 3 holes, start digging. They march to the back of the van and wrench the doors open. Rumlow's smirk vanishes. The interior is empty except for one unconscious guard and a massive, jagged hole burned through the floor of the vehicle, the telltale signature of a desperate and high-tech escape. Time skip, the secret facility. The industrial scent of the van is replaced by the sterile, damp air of an underground concrete bunker. Hill leads the group through a labyrinth of flickering fluorescent lights and humming machinery. The kind of weird science, architecture that feels more like a Cold War relic than a modern hospital. A doctor rushes toward them, his eyes darting between the wounded Avenger and the 2 newcomers, Alisa and Katie. Maria speaks to the doctor. GSW, she's lost at least a pint. Sam speaks up next. Or 2. Doctor nods at them. Let me take her. Maria stops him. She'll want to see him first. Hill leads them toward a curtained-off area. Alisa keeps close to Steve, her heightened grim senses picking up the rhythmic, mechanical thrum of life support monitors long before they see the bed. Katie follows at a distance, her movements stiff. The Red Room serum has already closed the worst of her physical wounds, but the Bolshoi glitch is still humming in the back of her mind, making the reality of this secret base feel like another layer of a dream. They turn the corner, and the trio, along with Alisa and Katie, freeze in shock. Nick Fury is alive, propped up in bed and looking remarkably defiant for a dead man. Nick looks at them. About damn time. Time skip, recovery ward. Later, the tension has settled into a grim quiet as the doctor tends to Natasha's shoulder. Katie sits on a nearby crate, staring at her hands. The industrial, ozone-heavy smell of the facility reminds her too much of Department X, but the sight of Steve and Alisa standing together provides a strange, grounded comfort she isn't used to. Nick tells them about his injuries. Lacerated spinal column, cracked sternum, shattered collarbone, perforated liver, one hell of a headache. Doctor speaks up as Natasha looks slightly confused. Don't forget your collapsed lung. Nick looks at him. Let's not forget that, otherwise I'm good. Natasha looks over to Nick. They cut you open. Your heart stopped. Nick looks over to her. Tetrodotoxin B slows the pulse to 1 beat a minute. Banner developed it for stress. Didn't work so great for him, but we found a use for it. Steve looks at him. Why all the secrecy? Why not just tell us? Steve's hand finds Alice's, his fingers interlacing with hers. He looks tired, the betrayal of S.H.I.E.L.D. and the discovery of Bucky leaving him raw. Alisa squeezes back, her presence a silent reminder that he still has someone who sees him for who he is, not just the shield he carries. Maria looks at Steve. Any attempt on the director's life had to look successful. Nick looks at them. Can't kill you if you're already dead. Besides, I wasn't sure who to trust. Fury's eye tracks the movement in the room, shifting from the medical monitors to the people standing in the shadows of the bunker. He gives Alisa a brief, knowing nod. He'd personally vetted the Alisa Gilbert file before the events of the Avengers, documenting her grim heritage and her relationship with Rogers with the clinical precision of a man who hates surprises. But then his gaze slides to Katie, who is currently leaning against a rusted support beam, her eyes distant as she navigates the mental static of her programming as he speaks up. I know the Grimm. Rogers keeps me updated on his domestic affairs, even when he thinks I'm not looking. He shifts painfully in the bed, gesturing with a slight tilt of his head toward the girl in the corner. But who's the other one? The one who looks like she's trying to remember if she's a person or a weapon. Natasha looks over at Katie, a flicker of recognition and deep-seated empathy crossing her face. She knows that look. She's worn it herself. That's Katie Forbes or Recluse, depending on which side of the iron curtain you're asking. She's out of the red room, Nick. She's coming down from her programming, but she's one of us. Nick looks over to Natasha. Another widow, just what I needed. Does she have the same mileage as you, or did they give her the upgraded chemistry? Natasha looks at him. She's got the serum. She's faster than she looks and harder to kill than she wants to be. Fury grunts, his eye returning to Steve and Alisa before talking to Katie. Well, Recluse, hope you're as good as your resume says, because the people coming for us don't care about your childhood memories, fake or otherwise. Katie's eye flicked to Natasha for a moment as Natasha nods to her before her eyes flick back to Nick, and she nods. Yes, sir. Time skip, the war room. The facility's main chamber is cold and smells of damp earth, a stark contrast to the gleaming glass of the Triskelion. Nick Fury stands by a makeshift table, staring down at a digital photo of Alexander Pierce. The light from the screen casts deep shadows over his face. Nick speaks up. This man declined the Nobel Peace Prize. He said, peace wasn't an achievement, it was a responsibility. See, it's stuff like this that gives me trust issues. Natasha looks over to Nick. We have to stop the launch. Nick looks at her. I don't think the council's accepting my calls anymore. Fury flips open a heavy industrial case, revealing 3 glowing server chips. The hum of the electronics vibrates in the small room. Sam looks confused. What's that? Maria looks at Sam. Once the helicarriers reach 3,000 feet, they'll triangulate with Insight satellites becoming fully weaponized. Nick speaks up to tell everyone. We need to breach those carriers and replace their targeting blades with our own. Maria speaks up next. One or two won't cut it. We need to link all 3 carriers for this to work, because if even one of those ships remains operational, a whole lot of people are gonna die. Alisa stands beside Steve, her eyes tracking the movement of the chips. As a Grimm, she spent her life seeing the monsters hidden in plain sight. The idea of HYDRA lurking inside S.H.I.E.L.D. feels like a natural, if horrific, extension of the world she knows. Beside her, Katie stares at the blades, her red room training analyzing the tactical entry points while her mind flashes to the sterile labs of Department X to her. These helicarriers are just bigger versions of the cages she grew up in. Nick tells them the plan. We have to assume everyone aboard those carriers is HYDRA. We need to get past them, insert the server blades, and maybe, just maybe, we can salvage what's left. Steve interrupts. We're not salvaging anything. We're not just taking down the carriers, Nick. We're taking down S.H.I.E.L.D. Nick shakes his head. S.H.I.E.L.D. had nothing to do with this. Steve looks at Nick. You gave me this mission. This is how it ends. S.H.I.E.L.D.'s been compromised. You said so yourself. HYDRA grew right under your nose and nobody noticed. Nick looks around. Why do you think we're meeting in this cave? I noticed. Steve doesn't move his gaze from Nick. And how many paid the price before you did? The room goes silent. Steve's gaze is unwavering. Alisa places a steadying hand on his lower back, feeling the tension radiating off him. She knows he's thinking about Bucky, about 70 years of torture that happened while S.H.I.E.L.D. stood watch. Nick looks down. Look, I didn't know about Barnes. Steve looks at Nick. Even if you have, would you have told me? Or would you have compartmentalized that too? S.H.I.E.L.D., HYDRA, it all goes. Fury looks around the room. He sees Natasha, who has spent her life running from one master to another, Katie, whose very DNA was rewritten by a different empire, and Alisa, who represents a world of shadows Fury could never quite control. Maria looks over to Nick. He's right. Fury's eye shifts to Natasha, then to Sam. Sam lifts his hands up. Don't look at me, I do what he does, just slower. Nick sighs. Well, looks like you're giving the orders now, Captain. Chapter 32, The Day the Sky Fell. Time skip, the Triskelion airspace. The roar of the helicarrier engines drowns out everything else as the massive ships breach the clouds. Steve and Sam drop from the Quinjet, followed closely by Alisa and Katie. Sam yells at Steve. Hey, Cap, how do we know the good guys from the bad guys? Steve yells back. If they're shooting at you, they're bad. Sam engages his wings and dives into the fray. Alisa doesn't have wings, but she has the preternatural agility of a Grimm. She hits the deck of the first carrier, rolling into a low crouch. 2 HYDRA agents level their rifles at her, but she's a blur of motion, disarming the first with a bone-shattering kick and using him as a shield against the second. Alisa comes through the comms. Clear on the lower deck. Steve, go. Sam flying through a hail of gunfire. Hey, Cap, I found those bad guys you were talking about. Steve runs. You okay? Sam yells. I'm not dead yet. Time skip. Inside Helicarrier Alpha. While Steve and Sam work the server blades, Katie moves through the maintenance ducts of the second carrier like a ghost. Her red room training makes her silent, her serum makes her lethal. She intercepts a squad of soldiers near the bridge, her movements a terrifying display of red room tech efficiency. She doesn't just fight, she dismantles them. Maria comes through the comms. 8 minutes, Cap. Steve tells Maria, working on it, Alpha locked. Sam comes through next. I had to take a detour. Sam pulls off a literal Hail Mary move, leading heat-seeking missiles into the carrier's hull to blast himself an entrance. Oh yeah, I'm in. Bravo locked. Maria tells them. 2 down, 1 to go. Charlie carriers 45 degrees off the port bow, 6 minutes. Time skip, the final carrier. Steve and Sam land on the third ship, but they aren't alone. Katie drops from a higher catwalk just as the Winter Soldier emerges from the shadows. Katie mutters as her hand curls up into a ball. You gotta be shitting me. She looks over to Steve as she stops thinking about Caroline to make herself become Recluse. Go, Steve, I've got him. Katie lunges. It's a clash of two different eras of Soviet science. The Winter Soldier's raw cybernetic power against Katie's biochemical speed. She lands a flurry of strikes, her enhanced reflexes allowing her to dodge his metal fist by mere inches. She kicks off his chest, flipping backward, but Bucky is a relentless machine. He catches her midair by the throat, his metal fingers tightening. Katie speaks out as she chokes. You don't know me, but I know your creators. With a grunt of effort, Bucky hurls her across the deck. She hits a bulkhead with enough force to kill a normal person, but the serum absorbs the impact. Before she can recover, Bucky turns his sights on Steve and Sam. Steve yells, Sam, look out. Bucky rips a wing off Sam's suit and kicks him off the edge. Alisa, seeing Katie struggling to stand and Sam falling, doesn't hesitate. Alisa yells at Steve, Steve, finish it, I've got them. Alisa sprints to the edge and jumps. She catches a protruding piece of debris to slow her descent, then drops the remaining distance to the roof of the Triskelion, where Sam has just crash-landed. She hits the ground and sprints to Katie's side, as the girl tumbles down onto the same roof, coughing up blood that's already beginning to clear. Alisa looks over to Sam. Stay down, Sam, you're grounded. She looks over to Katie. You still with me, Recluse? Katie wipes her mouth. Had worse. Sam speaks through the comms. Cap, come in, are you okay? Alisa looks over to Sam as Steve replies. Yeah, I'm here. I'm still on the helicarrier. Don't worry, I got it. Time skip, the 41st floor. The spider. Katie's POV. The office glass shatters as the building groans under the weight of the overhead battle. Sam is breathing hard, his wings battered, as Rumlow stalks toward him with the methodical patience of a shark. Rumlow speaks to his team. I'm on 41, headed towards the southwest stairwell. Suddenly, Katie Forbes, in full Recluse gear, drops from a ceiling vent, landing silently between them. Her expression is cold, her eyes devoid of the conflict she'd shown in the van. Rumlow pauses, a smirk spreading across his face. Ah, the Red Room's finest. Glad to see some of us still know which side of the fence has the power. You here to help me finish this bird? Katie doesn't look at Sam. She keeps her gaze fixed on Rumlow, her posture rigid. Department X sent their regards, Rumlow. HYDRA's order is preferable to SHIELD's chaos. Sam staggers up. Katie, what are you doing? After everything Steve and Alisa did. Katie moves her head slightly, not too much to draw notice, but enough. Steve and Alisa are sentimental. I am a weapon. She turns toward Sam, her hand reaching for the widow's bite on her wrist. Rumlow laughs, stepping forward to join her in the kill. This is gonna hurt. There are no prisoners with HYDRA, just order, and order only comes through pain. You ready for yours? Sam rolls his eyes. Man, shut the hell up. Rumlow lunges, but as he passes Katie, her ball-shaped glitch facade vanishes. In one fluid, blurred motion fueled by the Red Room serum, she pivots. Instead of hitting Sam, she drives a palm strike into Rumlow's throat and fires a literal electrostatic charge from her wrist directly into his chest. The smell of ozone fills the air as Rumlow is sent flying back into a desk. Katie looks over to Sam. I'm a weapon, Wilson, but I pick the target. Go. Rumlow wheezing as he pushes himself up. You, traitorous, bitch. He looks over to Sam. You're out of your depth, kid. He charges back at them, but the floor suddenly tilts at a violent 45-degree angle. The first helicarrier groans and slams into the side of the Triskelion, the massive hull shearing through the 41st floor. Fire and debris explode between them, catching Rumlow in the primary blast radius as the ceiling collapses. Sam grabs Katie. We gotta move now. Sam sprints toward the northwest corner, Katie matching his pace with her enhanced speed as the building disintegrates behind them, and he speaks through the comms. Please, tell me you got that chopper in the air. Natasha comes through. Sam, Katie, where are you? Sam yells. 41st floor, northwest corner. Natasha comes through again. We're on it, stay where you are. Sam yells, not an option. The floor vanishes beneath them. Sam grabs Katie, bracing for the leap. They jump together as the glass explodes outward. Below them, the chopper piloted by Fury and Natasha swerves into view just in time. Sam and Katie tumble into the open bay door, hitting the metal floor hard. Sam gassos, 41st floor, 41st. Nick looks at him. It's not like they put the floor numbers on the outside of the building. Natasha speaks through the comms as Alisa helps Sam and Katie. Hill, where's Steve? You got a location on Rogers. Katie sits up, her breathing heavy but her wounds already beginning to knit shut. She looks at Sam, then at Natasha, the mask of the Recluse finally cracking to reveal the girl who just wanted to find her way home. Time skip, Washington, D.C. Memorial Hospital. Scroll and Shield. Alisa's and Steve's POV. The dust has settled. HYDRA is exposed, S.H.I.E.L.D. has fallen, and the world is reeling. Inside a private room guarded by two grim-faced agents, the soft, soulful sound of Marvin Gaye's Trouble Man fills the air. Steve lies in the bed, bandages wrapping his torso. Steve speaks in a raspy voice. On your left. Sam looks over to Steve as he smirks. Look who's back. Alisa stands by the window, her eyes fixed on Steve. She knows the doctors have done what they can, but Steve's recovery from the helicarrier crash and the fight with Bucky is slow, even for a super soldier. She catches the eye of a passing nurse. Alisa tells the nurse softly, "Excuse me, my friend over there in the flight suit. He hasn't eaten in 10 hours. Could you point him toward the best food vendor? Maybe walk him there so he doesn't get lost." The nurse smiles and nods, ushering a reluctant Sam out of the room for a quick break. Once the door clicks shut, Alisa pulls out her phone and hits a speed dial she rarely uses. She speaks through the phone. "Lillth, it's Alisa, I'm at the hospital. Steve is..." He's struggling to heal after the fall. He knows about the world, he knows about you. I need you to come around, he needs the blood. She hangs up and walks back to Steve's side, taking his hand. He looks at her, the recognition of what she's doing in his eyes. Thanks to Alisa, the world of the supernatural isn't a secret anymore. It's his lifeline. He looks over to Alisa. "You didn't have to call her." Alisa looks at him and smiles. "You're not doing this the slow way, Steve. Not this time." She looks over to the door for a moment, then back at Steve. "At one point, we do need to tell Sam or he'll probably say he need a mental hospital." Steve does a little smile. Time skip, the hospital room again. The rhythmic beep of the heart monitor is the only sound in the room until the air suddenly grows heavy, a faint scent of rain and ozone swirling near the window. Lillth doesn't use the door. She simply appears, a shadow detaching itself from the corner of the room. Her presence is commanding, her dual nature as a vampire-demon hybrid radiating a cold, ancient power that makes the fluorescent lights flicker. Alisa stands as she enters, offering a respectful nod. "Thank you for coming so quickly. The serum is trying to knit him back together, but the damage from the fall, it's too much, even for him." Lillth moves to the bedside with predatory grace. Her eyes, dark and bottomless, scan Steve's battered frame. Steve looks up at her, his breathing shallow but his gaze steady. He's seen a lot of things in his life, and thanks to Alisa, the existence of someone like Lillth is no longer a shock. It's a necessity. Lillth tells him, "You've been through a war, soldier, but your body wasn't meant to break like this." She leans over him, the movement fluid and silent. Without a word, she presses a sharp fingernail against her wrist, drawing a thin line of dark, crimson blood. It glows with a faint, ethereal shimmer, the mark of her demonic heritage infused with the life force of a vampire. Lillth looks at Steve. "Drink. This isn't just for healing. It's for the strength you're going to need for what comes next." She holds her wrist to his lips. Steve doesn't hesitate. He closes his eyes and drinks. The effect is instantaneous. A surge of unnatural heat floods his veins, chasing away the bone-deep ache of the helicarrier crash. The bruised, purple skin around his ribs begins to fade to a healthy hue, and the jagged lacerations on his arms pull shut, leaving only thin, fatting silver lines. Steve exhales a long, shaky breath, his grip on Alisa's hand tightening as his strength returns in a violent, revitalizing rush. Steve speaks again as his voice becomes stronger. "I can feel it. It's like the ice is finally melting." Lillth pulls back, the wound on her wrist already vanished. She looks at Alisa, a small, knowing smirk playing on her lips. "He's stable now, but keep him close, Grimm. The world is getting darker, and even a captain needs a light to follow." With a final, lingering look at the door where she can sense Sam Wilson returning with a tray of cafeteria food. Lillth vanishes back into the shadows just as the handle turns. Sam walks in. "Man, that lady at the vendor was talkative. Anyway, Steve, I got you some." Sam stops, blinking at the bed. Steve is sitting up, the color back in his face, looking like he's ready to run a marathon. "Okay, either this hospital has the best Jell-O in the world, or I missed something big." Alisa smiles at Sam. "Just a quick recovery, Sam. He's a fast healer." Chapter 33. The Grimm Who Wasn't Supposed to Exist. Time skip, outside of the hospital. Alisa steps outside as her phone rings and she picks up. "Monroe, what's wrong?" Monroe speaks through the phone. "I don't know how this happened, but the Siegbarst is dead." Alisa stops mid-step. "How is that possible?" "The Siegbarst," Monroe repeats, quieter now. "Torn apart, not clean, not precise, brutal." "That's not possible," she says, sharper now. "I thought I was the only Grimm left." She hears Monroe exhale slowly. "That's what we thought," he admits. "Nick's gone, you're here, we don't know anyone else who could." Alisa thinks for a moment and remembers seeing an image of a man with her bio mom. "You got to be kidding me." Monroe asks, "What?" Alisa tells him, "I think it's my father, not John Gilbert, Aaron Roth." Silence, as even Monroe doesn't have a response for that. Time skip, hospital parking lot. Alisa lowers the phone slowly, the call ending in a quiet click. The world feels off, like something just shifted beneath her feet. Behind her, the hospital doors open again and Steve steps out. He's already dressed, clean shirt, jacket, still moving a little stiffly but far from helpless. His eyes scan instinctively, taking in exits, sightlines, threats, and then they land on her. He notices immediately that something's wrong. He walks over. "You okay?" Alisa doesn't answer right away. She just looks at him, really looks at him. Then she says, "We need to go back to Portland." Steve studies her for half a second, then nods. "All right." No questions, and that alone says everything. Time skip, on the road to Portland. The car cuts through the highway, tires slicing over wet asphalt. Rain starts not long after. Soft and steady, then relentless. The windshield wipers move in a rhythmic sweep back and forth, filling the silence. Steve sits in the passenger seat, watching the road ahead. But not really. He keeps glancing at her. Reading. Alisa drives like she always does, controlled, precise. But there's tension in it now. Her grip on the wheel is too tight. Her shoulders too rigid. Her silence too loud. "You want to tell me what happened?" Steve asks finally. Her jaw tightens. For a second, it looks like she won't. Then she says, "There's another Grimm." Steve turns slightly. "I thought you said." "I did," she cuts in. "I was wrong." A beat. "The Siegbarst is dead." Steve frowns. "That a person." "Wesson," she corrects automatically. "Big, violent, hard to kill." She swallows, and something tore it apart. That lands. Steve's posture shifts subtle, but immediate. More alert and focused. "Another Grimm could do that," he says. Alisa nods once. "Yeah." Silence stretches. The rain gets heavier, louder like it's pressing in around them. Then Steve asks, "You know who it is?" That question sits heavier than everything else. Because this time she does. Alisa exhales slowly, eyes locked on the road. I think so, but I think it's my father. Steve blinks. I thought. So did I, she interrupts, quieter now. The edge is gone, or what's left is something deeper. Something she doesn't say out loud often. I thought John Gilbert was my father, she continues. Turns out, he's just the man who only made my twin sister, Alina, Jenna, raised us. Steve doesn't interrupt. Doesn't question. He just listens. Alice's voice drops, barely above a whisper. Aaron Roth. The name settles between them. Unfamiliar to Steve. But the weight behind it, that he understands. Time skip highway, hours later. Portland begins to appear in the distance. City lights bleeding through the rain. Muted, blurred, distant. Steve shifts slightly. You think he knows about you? Alisa lets out a quiet, humorless breath. If he's a Grimm. Yeah, she says. He knows. Another silence. Then Steve says, then we'll figure it out. Not you. Wait. Alisa glances at him. Just for a second. Something flickers there. Gone just as fast. You don't even know what you're getting into, she says. Steve gives the faintest hint of a smile. Yeah, he replies. I've heard that before. That pulls the smallest breath of a laugh out of her. Short and real. Then gone. The car keeps moving. Through the rain. Through the dark. Toward Portland. Toward answers and toward a Grimm who was never supposed to exist.